initially started doing documentary films in Delhi because I wanted to stay on in Delhi. Although fiction was exciting after finishing mass communication, and I assisted first on a fiction project. That was my first job outside of Jamia. But I decided that I wanted to stay on in Delhi and not move to Bombay at that time. So I started working on documentaries. Then I had a very, very keen interest in music. And this is now the year 2000 where the dot-com boom had happened. And I wanted to travel around the country making field recordings with folk artists. And the idea was to popularize the folk music of India. You know, I had grown up in a household where there was music for, not just weddings and births and things like that, but also Tej. My mum would, organize this program. There would be a jhula in our lawn, and there would be songs that we were singing. I was her assistant number one, so I was deeply into folk music myself. So I was fascinated by the thought of not only archiving, but actually trying to make them available to a larger cross section of people who wanted to hear them. So I had traveled around the country to small villages and small towns, recording with folk artists, making field recordings in their own home or in the field or near the well or something like that. So I spent a lot of time actually doing that, and then we released albums of that. And but yeah, as a commercial venture, I think it was a project. Possibly, I'd like to believe it was a bit ahead of its times. Folk music hadn't yet caught the imagination of people at large, so it didn't get the kind of commercial success that we had hoped for. After that, I decided to write a film, and I collaborated with Ritesh Shah, who is on another panel at 2 o'clock today. Uh, so we go back. I had done a lot of theatre also with a group called Act One in Delhi, which has given, I am very proud to say, it's given this country some of the best people in the field of cinema. Actors, directors, other technicians. I mean, L.Sharma, who was the director of the theatre group, really gave us, in fact, a lot of people said about his theatre that it's very cinematic, because he had come back from a stint in Mumbai when he was directing his theatre. So I had now experience of theatre, I had experience of music, I myself was into some other forms of the arts as well. So I wrote a film which Ritesh mostly wrote. We developed the story together. And within a year of having written that, it was signed by a very, very big name producer, and I was meant to direct it. I'm not taking the names right now.
Didn't get made.
For that you have to, you have to meet me alag se. So that film then, it almost got made at least 3 times, but didn't get made. And it's been over a decade. I'm still hoping that it'll get made because it's a fantastic script, but it didn't. And so that's the thing that, I would just like to underline, that you all have to be prepared for in this industry especially, that things will come this close to happening and then they won't happen. And you're not allowed to sort of sit back and lose hope and sort of get dejected and give up. You just have to persevere. You just have to keep at it, despite maybe your family is also telling you that I don't know what industry have you joined, यहाँ तो कुछ होता ही नहीं है, होते होते चीज़ें बिगड़ती रहती है, but that's just the nature of the business. So if you are going to enter this industry, you have to be prepared for that. Then I wrote a film called Shibani, which was informed a lot by the travels I had done and recordings of folk music that I had done. And we made that, again, 3 friends got together and we produced it independently. We approached a lot of studios and they told us, you've made a very good film, but why don't you remake it with some stars? So that's also the nature of the business. Anyway, we had a small release of the film. The people who watched it really liked it. Then it was on Netflix for a few years, where it got a very, very wide audience, which was very, very sort of, heartening for an independent filmmaker. After that, I directed and created Guilty Minds. I come from a legal family, so it was a pretty natural thing for me to do. And Guilty Minds, I don't know, I didn't see too many hands that went up, which makes me sad.
We'll come to Guilty Minds more in detail.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how my journey as a sort of a writer, director. I was an actor originally also. I continue to be a singer, but more from a very hobby perspective. But I think all of the interests in the arts really inform my filmmaking, and that is what makes me really happy, and what I would also like to tell all of you. Over to you.
That's great. Shibani, your career has been very, very interesting. I mean, and it's like, do you remember at some stage that you thought that you would end up actually producing a show, given the fact that you were initially a singer, an MC on television shows and other events, then you became an actress to the point that finally you reached the Buck Cartel. But can you just take us through that journey? And I'm always very curious about, as a question I ask, I mean, I look at my career also, what did I want to become when I started this process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Firstly, thank you all of you for having us here today. It's incredible to be on this campus. It's such a beautiful campus. The journey is an interesting one. I have been kind of a part of the entertainment world since I was a kid. I was singing Jagjit and Chitra duets with my dad from the age of 4. I went to a performing arts school when I was younger. And when I moved to New York, I think there was this draw towards the South Asian community, what little there was in the arts at that time. And the world of presenting kind of found me. It wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to do. But I think people noticed that I could kind of speak, so they offered me a job, and it became something that I did every weekend. And strangely enough, when I moved to India to pursue a career here, it was the first thing that I was offered here as well. Never had any intention of doing it, but it fell into my lap, and I thought, okay, let me run with this, because it seems to be there wasn't a huge number of presenters at that time. And I remember doing my first show, and by the time the first show was on air, I had booked my second show. By the time that was on air, I booked my third show, and then I got a call for the IPL, which freaked me out, because it was live, it was cricket, and although I had a knowledge of cricket growing up in Australia, the idea of presenting a sport live in a country that loved cricket so much terrified me. So my initial reaction was to say, no, I'm not doing that. But obviously there were people around me who insisted that I take on the job and that it would be an incredible experience. And so that's where kind of my presenting career began and took over, and I'm still presenting to this day. I think when you're a part of the industry, the entertainment industry, whether it's in Hollywood or whether it's here in India, I think there are so many different types of things that you can do, and those opportunities do present themselves. I mean, whether we're in ad campaigns or whether we get the opportunity to sing on stage or maybe do a dance performance at an event, there are many, many different things or many different possibilities. I knew very early on that presenting was not the only thing that I wanted to do. It was a means to an end. And it was shortly, I think, after I started dating Farhan that I realized, excuse me, that I need to tap into my the creative juices a little bit more, because something is not being fulfilled. I need to figure out what that is.
You were acting already, though.
I was, yes, but very little. It wasn't a lot. And I still wasn't finding something that pulse was missing. I didn't know what it was that was making me feel excited. So during the lockdown, by default almost, Farhan was working on the post of Tufan. Have you guys seen Tufan? Yes, okay. So he was working on the post of that film at the time, and so because we were all in our houses, I was privy to so much of the post process just by listening to him on the phone, hearing him on Zoom calls, discussing BGM, and it just, I felt drawn to it. So my ears would constantly perk up every time he spoke to the director or every time he spoke to Shankar Ehsaan Loy about the music, and I thought, okay, this is what I want to do. And so the idea for Dabba Cartel came, it actually had already seeded at the end of 2019, and during the lockdown I started working on it with the writers. And it was probably the first time in my career, and I know that there are many stepping stones to building a career and kind of progressing and moving forward, but it was the first time that I actually felt alive. Like, this was something that was really inspiring. It was, fulfilling. It was something that I was able to kind of tap into creatively, and it just became my career. And it wasn't planned, but it happened, and now I feel like there's no looking back.
That's the best way how life just takes the shape, really.
Yeah.
You don't plan, but the universe is sort of working in that, because you are already on your own working in that direction. The universe watches you, so have faith in that. But a question I had, can you guys explain what a showrunner is? So, as an executive producer, were you the showrunner also of Dabba Cartel?
Yes.
Okay, and you were the showrunner as well as because we know what a producer is for a film, because we know what a director is for the film or the show. But explain to the audience here, what exactly is the role?
Well, in my case, in Guilty Minds, I was the creator. The showrunner, creator is used sort of interchangeably. And I was also the director. So the lines were very, very blurred. Because I was primarily involved with the creatives in any case. So, but I think the showrunner is also, it's again, in my understanding, and Shibani can add her own experiences and her understanding of it, but it's a nebulous term, just like the producer actually, on a film as well. It's a pretty nebulous term. A lot of people think the producer is somebody who will just bring in the cash and pay out people at the end of the day. So I don't think it works quite like that. And the showrunner is, I think, somebody who's holding the creative vision together. The director could be different for different episodes when you're talking about a series. So again, my experience was different because I was directing all the episodes. But the showrunner is the person who is there from the beginning to the end of the project and is really responsible for, जिसको बोलते हैं ना सुर, एक सुर जो होता है किसी शो का या किसी भी क्रिएटिव प्रोडक्ट का, to make sure that that is consistent throughout with all the people who come and go. The writers are coming and going for some time, the directors might be coming in only a little before the shoot and then going out, and the director might not be so actively involved with the post-production, although I was, but may not be. So in that case, it's the showrunner who is really taking the final creative calls, in my understanding. Shibani?
Yeah, pretty similar. I'm the creator of Dabba Cartel and also the showrunner, which is the executive producer. But in our case, the director was very much involved in the creative, and one of the writers is also the creator with me. So we were a close unit, and the idea was to creatively oversee the vision of the show and make sure that, as Shivali mentioned, there's sometimes you've got multiple directors on a show. In our case, we only had one. In your case, you also had one. So which makes it easier. Because in the job of a showrunner, when you have multiple directors, is a little bit harder because you've got to kind of make sure that everything is seamless in a sense. As a creator, when you're handing over a show to a director, it's as if you are kind of birthing a child and then handing it to someone else to kind of raise with you, in a sense. So it's so important to have that vision in line with each other. And I think I was really lucky with Dabba Cartel because, look, it's a long process. There'll always be creative differences, minor here and there, but overall, if the vision for the show is the same and where you want to get the show to is the same, then it's an easier process. But ultimately, it is to creatively oversee the vision of the show.
You were on the set every day, of course.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Because would that be sort of a threat to the director? Probably you just want to give the director the.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, there's so much prep that you spend months, years, depending on the situation, writing the show. You know, you're diving deep into characters, trajectory of the characters over the course of the season, the plot, the subplot, and everything is so. I mean, you've discussed it to death by the time you get onto set. There's a kind of handing of the baton that happens at that point. And really, it's about just trusting the director to have the vision to take it forward. So even during this process, so often Hitesh Bhatia, who is the director of Dabak Hotel, would call and say, "What do you think about this?" And you know, I think it was really important for me to understand in those moments that unless I felt really strongly about something, it was really important to let him flow with decisions that were made on set, because when you're on set, that relationship between director and actor is so important. And you can't have 15 other people there having a say and being involved. All your work is done in prep and when you're writing the show. The other thing is that you can take a screenplay and your interpretation of it and your vision of it needs to be handed over to the director that you trust to do that. And I trusted Hitesh to do that. He knew exactly what he was doing. Sometimes more so than I did, to be honest. And I felt it personally in the choices that he made. If for those of you that haven't seen in the show, there is a gay relationship between two women, and on paper the scenes are a certain way, and it's the choices that he has made to be able to show those particular scenes with so much love and tenderness. And bring them out in the most beautiful way. And so you rely on the director to make those choices. You know, you don't need to be there on set to oversee exactly what he's doing and how he's going to shoot it. And that, if you can kind of get that rhythm happening, then it's a beautiful synergy that you have whether you're on set or not.
What stage did the director come in? I mean,
He actually, so